A very good evening to our viewers. Thank you for joining us tonight on the evening review. My name is Toivon Jabela, your host. Tonight on the platform, we are joined by Dorthea Nangolo. She is the newly elected president of the Namibia National Students Organization, Nanso. And we are here to hear her vision and to share with us her plans for the very important position and job that she has been endorsed with. Thank you very much, Dorthea, for making time. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It was a very busy weekend. We saw the social media and everywhere else where so much was going on, and yes, you emerged. Maybe first and foremost, how did you circumvent your way around that debacle that was in front of the obstacle that was in front of you?
By obstacle, perhaps?
No, I mean that you ought to have been with others,
yes,
vying for that position.
Yes.
So it was not just you were not wheelbarrowed into that position. You had to fight your way to the top.
Yes.
So how did you manage that?
I think I think somebody also asked me during the Congress after my election results came out, how I made it to that point. And my answer remains, I think my work spoke for itself. A spokesperson, I was very intentional about the work that I was doing in the organization, but also my vision for the organization. And I think that really spoke for me. I didn't have to do much. It spoke for itself, and it got me where I am. And I think another thing is just ambition and being very bold. I was overwhelmed by how bold I was in this Congress, just being bold about what I wanted, about vying for the position as well. So I think that really came through for me and put me where I am today.
I think the spokesperson's position is as important as it was. Usually it's your secretary generals and others that would elevate to president. So it means whatever you were doing must have been very, very impressive.
Yes, thank you very much. I think it's unfortunate that our secretary general, or most of my seniors, decided to leave, to say that, look, they've served their term in the organization. They've done what they wanted to do. And it was time for them to take up other spaces. And only a few of us in the National Executive Committee were left. And then I decided, look, I think, let me go for this.
Do you think it's helpful that as an insider already, that it even makes your job now a bit easier because you have institutional memory and everything as far as Nanso is concerned?
Definitely. I think unlike when I was spokesperson, I was thrown in the deep end. And I was telling you earlier that this is where I had my very first interview as the spokesperson at the time. So it was a bit difficult to navigate. But now as president, it's easier to navigate because I've seen the work of the National Executive Committee. I understand the systems, the processes, and the institutions that are Nanso. So I think my work is a bit easier. Of course, I'm still thrown in the deep end. It's a very huge responsibility, but I can navigate better now.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the Congress itself. In Namibia, in a lot of other platforms, whether it's Nanso or Swapo or other political parties or even unions, trade unions, when people talk about Congress, it is largely interpreted to be a convention of elections.
Yes.
But there's more that goes on at those platforms. What are some of the major decisions that you think or resolutions that were taken in the Congress?
All right, thank you very much. So one of our biggest resolutions, and this one I'm very passionate about, is free higher education. For so long, higher education has been commodified in this country. Nanso had a resolution 16, but our resolution 16 was just looking at how to transform NSFAF loans into grants. But now our Congress has decided that the students are fed up. It's time for higher education in this country, and we are ready to work with government to come up with a strategic policy that speaks to how we can possibly make higher education free. And we also looked at early childhood development, as it is ECD is under the Ministry of Gender, and that is why so much goes wrong there, because you don't have trained, qualified teachers or properly trained teachers, and also not much effort is put towards ECD in terms of education in general. And that is why we have students or we have learners that come from ECD and they may end up struggling. So we then decided that, look, it's time for ECD to go under the Ministry of Education, so that we have qualified teachers, so that we also understand that there's a proper curriculum that is universal across the country.
Do you think that you have a buy-in? You will have a buy-in. Of course, it's not going to be a walk in the park. So it's some sort of battles that you have to fight.
Yes.
Some advocacy and so on fights. Is that one of the things that are on top of your agenda as president, to say, these are the resolutions and this is how I'm going to run with them?
Definitely. I think even when in my acceptance speech, I did inform the Congress that I'm a leader who must be held accountable. The resolutions that we have made, by the time I leave office in the next 2 years, we must be able to tick off those resolutions. So, we've already started the work. Even this morning, we're already starting the lobbying, scheduling the necessary meetings as well, so that we already start the groundwork.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Who qualifies to be a Nanso member? Or who do you represent?
All right. So we represent all students, learners, and trainees in Namibia. So as long as you are registered as a learner or a student or a trainee in Namibia, regardless of where you come from, you qualify automatically to be a Nanso member. But of course, we do have registration processes where we have card holding members. As of recent, we're very proud to announce during our Congress that we registered 276,000 members across the country. So these are card-holding members, but we still have a large number of other members who, of course, are not card-holding members, but we still represent them.
So in what kind of situations would you represent typically a learner or a student?
I think, somebody joked the other day that Nanso is involved everywhere. It would be issues of examination. You are denied entry into your examination, we are there. Issues of registration, you can't register because you don't have the money to register, we are there. Issues around representation at school level, we are also involved. So I think our involvement really goes to everything that concerns the Namibian child. Nanso must be present.
There's something that was mentioned at your Congress. We just saw screenshots. And
yes.
I think in the outgo, your predecessor mentioned something about Nanso members having to have registered for elections in order to either participate in your particular Congress election or to vie for positions. I can't remember the details. What was that? I know that you're not the one who said it, but is it some sort of policy position?
No. So in her remarks, she encouraged all our members to register, all eligible members to register to vote. And she did mention that moving forward, part of our activities, be it we are having a get-together as Nanso members, we are having a meeting as Nanso members, you will be required, not to say you cannot enter, but you'll be required as a form of encouragement to say, colleagues, here is my membership, here is my voter's card. So it was kind of said to say that, look, at the end of the day, as much as we are a student organization, we must be able to influence other young people to participate in democratic processes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's very, very important. Is Nanso affiliated to any political party? How is where does it find itself in that sketch?
Nanso is not affiliated to any political party, but I think over the years there's been a lot of confusion about our affiliation, primarily because as a student organization, it's quite unfair that people take away our right to participate in or to have political affiliation. Toivo, today, as the Nanso president, my right to participate in political activities is taken away from me, because if today somebody sees me with a political party's t-shirt, then it's over. Nanso is affiliated to a specific political party, but Nanso as an organization is apolitical. The individuals in Nanso, however, remain to have the right to political affiliation, and that should not be connected to the organization in any way.
We know, for example, that historically Nanso was very close to the ruling party.
Yes.
Especially in the 80s, leading up to independence.
Yes.
How would you say, or what would you say is the connection, if any, between the organization and Swapo today?
Yes. So our affiliation to Swapo was from 1984 when we were first established.
Yeah.
Remember that we were established to organize students to fight for the liberation struggle. At the time, Swapo was the leading party when it came to the liberation struggle, and we affiliated ourselves so that we can attain our goal, which is independence for Namibia.
Yeah.
After 1990, when we attained our independence, we then decided that, look, we have no business being affiliated to any political party anymore, because our role is student politics and education only. We have no business with political parties. We then de-affiliated. At this point now, our connection to Swapo party, I think it's Swapo party is the ruling party, and we are an organization, we are the biggest organization in the country, and we are under a Swapo-led government. So of course, if there is need for engagement at high level, there will be engagement. We are meeting Swapo ministers, you know. So I think that is the only connection that is right now. Yeah. We do not say Nanso and Swapo are sitting. We've never had such sittings. But of course, our members may have offices. They may take up space in the Swapo party, but that does not in any way connect to Nanso.
Yeah. The Vice President, Tumbana Lindaitwa, she opened officially your event on, was it on Wednesday or?
On Thursday.
Thursday.
Yes.
Was that in her party or government capacity?
That was in her government capacity. She attended our official opening as the Vice President of the country, and her address was in her capacity as the Vice President of the country. She did also mention, if you listen to her address, she spoke about the role of government, our relationship as Nanso with government, and not of her party at all. So yes.
Yeah. One of the questions that I asked a gentleman that was here last week was about, we were talking about Nanso, of course, and the reason why I'm asking about the affiliation or non-affiliation to the ruling party is because we have seen over the years that Nanso has served quite subtly as a conveyor belt for, I wouldn't say a conveyor belt, maybe that is not the right word, but we've seen key appointments of very important people being made from Nanso. People, Nanso leaders or ex-leaders who are being taken straight to government on a Swapo ticket, maybe to serve in parliament on a Swapo ticket. And there's always been that gray area, people thinking that maybe the organization is linked to the ruling party. Is that your ambition personally?
Personally, I have no political ambitions. I must make it clear on the record. I have no political ambitions. Mine is to serve and to leave the organization when my time comes.
When your time comes. How influential is Nanso in the political discourse? I know that it's a student organization and you are doing well in that space, but there's always this idea that Nanso is, because even last weekend, there are people who were calling me in my capacity, of course, as a journalist, to say, guys, run to Debra now. There's machinations going on. The Swapo Youth League is here. They're trying to influence things. That surely means that Nanso ought to be. Are you really independent?
I think this is news to me that there was involvement of Swapo Party Youth League. I clearly, the sources are not reaching me, but we remain independent as an organization. Yeah. Of course, there is some sort of interest. There's no secret. There's interest in the outcome of our congresses, because at the end of the day, we influence a lot. We influence policy. We influence the state of education in this country. So of course there is interest, but Nanso remains independent. Nanso remains apolitical. And we do not tolerate, and we're very clear even during our Congress, we do not tolerate any form of infiltration from any political party using this organization as a playground. That is something we don't take lightly.
Yeah.
Yes.
We go for a break and then return with the Nanso president.
Connection. It's in the human touch, the feeling of belonging. It inspires us and empowers us, creates clarity from complexity. It starts new conversations, unlocks the power of advice, and makes an impact on your life. At Alex Forbes, we pioneer insight to provide you with advice that connects your decisions of today to your impact tomorrow.
The conversation with Dorthea Nangolo continues. Now, Ms. President, the Nanso, when we spoke about 1984 when it was formed, it used to be such a radical movement. I suppose the dictates of the time, determined that kind of radicalism. But do you think that you are still a radical organization? Is it required, or is it actually necessary for Nanso to be radical, or you are now snowflake leaders who just want the easy way things, boardroom conversations, chats on groups and nothing like, picketing and confrontational sort of approach? What do you think of that?
Nanso is strategic, not radical. I'm saying this because the late Dr. Hage Geingob, in his remarks at our last Congress, the 17th National Students Congress, he mentioned that every wave of African leaders has its generational mandate. Similarly, every wave of Nanso leaders has its own mandate. In 1984, we had to be on the streets. We had to demonstrate, and we had to show the imperial government that the students did not want anymore. That needed to be done. But the toy-toying of 1984 cannot be done in our times today, because times are a bit different. It requires a different Nanso. And I think when people ask, why aren't you radical? Why aren't you on the streets? Nanso can only be here 40 years later because we are able to evolve with the times, and we are able to amend ourselves. We are able to understand the generation that we serve in. Today, Toivo, the most powerful tool is social media. If we want to shake the country, I'm telling you, if we really want to shake this country, we are going to use social media. And it's no longer going to the streets, because this is a generation that does not understand the power of going to the streets. You cannot take a person born in 2005 to the streets, because they don't understand that. And this is why so many protests being held, young people don't show up. There's a concern there, yes, and we have to evolve with the times and say that young people are actually more present on social media. What are we doing on social media? Petitions and so forth. But of course, Nanso remains where we need to be radical. I tell you now, we will be radical. Where we need to shut down Government Park, we'll shut down Government Park.
That's a good point, because at least you're not completely ruling out radicalism, because leaders want obedient people. Even in situations where you must speak up, leaders enjoy it when people are obedient. Organizations like Nanso are obedient, labor unions are obedient, the pressure groups are obedient, and then they can do whatever they want. But I think, and it's not for me to say, but I think where a particular situation summons the radicalism in all of us, that we stand up and do that. Let's talk about the policy issues. We have many challenges in our education. Some learners are learning, are taught under trees, NASFAV. There are always questions there. Some people are saying, they are trying their best. Some are saying more can be done. Especially you spoke about converting loans, study loans into grants. What What are some of the thorny issues that you constantly hear as Nanso from your members?
I think the biggest issue, or most of our issues, are really around higher education. Of course, at basic education, we have issues of access, we have issues of infrastructure, we have issues of whether our learners have textbooks, you know, and moving into a digital era as well. But the biggest issues that we are constantly faced with, or maybe it's because we, as Nanso, we're able to attain one of our aspirations, which was a basic education, and that is why higher education becomes so critical to us. It's, for instance, student accommodation. As we speak, we have students who are paying 3,500 to share in a room of 4 people. The accommodation is unregistered, it is not safe. So there's need to regulate student accommodation in this country in terms of the rent and also in terms of safety of our students. We have another issue, which is transport. Every single day a student is leaving campus and they're at risk. They're at risk of being attacked, they're at risk of losing their laptops, their study materials. It's a concern, and it calls on us to come up with suitable solutions. We also look at just the state of higher education in general. It's not accessible. It's very, very expensive, like I said. So these are some of the strongest issues that we have to deal with every single year. It's these 3 issues.
Speaking of secondary education, there are challenges there. The failure rates are very, very high. Every time when the national exam results are announced, you know, really, really high. I think we saw in January when about 74 or something % of those who sat for national exams last year failed. Is that something that keeps you awake at night, and how are you addressing the authorities on that?
Definitely. I think the results or the performance is something that really is critical to us as Nanso, because every single year we are concerned. And we cannot act like everything is normal in a country when we don't even have 50% pass. It's scary, it's worrisome. And our engagement with the ministry or with government has always been, we need to take a proactive approach at addressing the issues. In 2022, we addressed the issue of infrastructure. We did our Access to Education campaign, and we focused on infrastructure, and we took it back to government to say that, look, we need classrooms, we need schools. And government then decided to construct a few more classrooms and schools. Early this year, we saw that there was an announcement there. This year, again, our Access to Education campaign focused on, look, apart from classrooms and textbooks and materials that students don't have, what is the other issue that we are overlooking? And that was social issues. And it's something that is so easy to ignore in education, because you're focusing on the material things in education, but you forget that there's early and unintended pregnancies. You're forgetting that there's substance abuse, which has become so common in our schools. You're forgetting that there's child-led homes. You're forgetting that there's so many issues, child labor. And it was eye-opening when we were in the regions, especially the northern regions, Toivo. We have learners who are going to school on an empty stomach. From school, this person has to go find a job, they have to go work. We have learners that are being taken from school to get married. And it's such a scary thing, but these are some of the issues that we also need to address. Apart from the material things in education, we must actively work towards addressing the social issues as well.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, either individually or as a collective in the Nanso context, about the commodification of hostels? We see, for example, at UNAM, this Mona there. It's a commercial enterprise operating on campus. Those of us who attended UNAM during our time when Emona did not exist, we just had the old hostels and the new hostels, and we paid what was a lot of money when you think of it, or at the time, but perhaps now you realize that it was not as bad as it felt at the time. But we have a full commercial accommodation operating on campus, and we are talking about the unaffordability of accommodation for students. What are your thoughts?
You know, I must say that student accommodation is a thriving industry for business people. It's ridiculously expensive. And our issue has always been, in the first place, I don't think students must be paying for accommodation in the first place, to be honest. I don't think it's something they should be doing. The institutions of higher learning must have the same system as schools at basic education, where you register for hostel, you pay a small hostel development fee that is not even compulsory, and you are in the hostel. Because there is a need. If we feel the need to accommodate our learners at basic education, what makes us then abandon them when they come to higher education? Especially now, because they are leaving their hometowns and they are coming to the city and other towns. So I think, and we're at the point where it's time. Of course, Nanso is starting to sound a bit overambitious, you know. You already want free higher education, now you're saying free hostels. But I think eventually we must get to a point where we start that conversation as well.
Absolutely. The last question to you, Ms. President, is if you can just, not in so many words, give us a sense of your vision for this position for the next 2 years. What do you want Dorthea Nangolo to be remembered for when she's no longer president of Nanso?
It's going to be one thing. My legacy is free higher education in this country, and I'm unapologetic about that, nothing else. Apart from other things that I may do in my presidency, by the time I leave office, I must be remembered for ensuring that there's an active education levy, so that an ordinary student from Ohalushu village, from wherever, is able to get on a bus and come to Windhoek and become a doctor free of charge.
Absolutely. Dorthea, thank you very much for coming through.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, congratulations once again.
Thank you.
There is Dorthea Nangolo. She is president of Nanso, freshly elected last weekend at the Congress of Nanso, sharing with us her vision. Thank you for watching.